Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. It had been 10 years since our wedding day, but I still remember the vows Claire and I exchanged like they were yesterday. Through thick and thin, we had promised. I took those words to heart. So, on our anniversary, I wanted to surprise her, show her how much I still loved her, how even after all this time, she was still the one I wanted. I knew she'd been stressed with work lately, so I figured a spontaneous visit would lift her spirits. The office building stood tall, its glass windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. I stepped inside, feeling a little out of place in my casual clothes. As I made my way through the lobby, the receptionist, a young woman I had seen a few times before, greeted me with a hesitant smile. "Mr. Thompson. What brings you by today?" she asked, her eyes darting nervously between me and the computer screen. I shrugged, holding up the bouquet of lilies. "Thought I'd surprise my wife," I said, flashing a grin. Her smile wavered. "Oh, Claire's in her office," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. "But she might be in a meeting." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten, but I brushed it off. "No problem," I replied. "I'll just wait." I took the elevator up to the 12th floor, thinking about how happy Claire would be when she saw me standing there, flowers in hand, ready to whisk her away for an impromptu dinner. We hadn't had one of those carefree moments in a while. She had been so busy, late nights at the office piling up, and I had convinced myself it was just the demands of her new role. When the elevator doors opened, I made my way down the familiar hallway toward her office. Her door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, I could hear voices, hers and a man's. The voice was familiar, too. I stepped closer, my heart racing, but not from excitement anymore. "Richard, we shouldn't." Claire's voice was soft, almost a whisper, but I caught the hesitation in it. "Claire, no one's going to find out. We've been careful, haven't we?" Richard's voice was smooth, calculated. I froze. "Careful?" My mind struggled to process the words, but my feet moved on their own, pushing the door open just enough for me to see inside. There they were, Claire, my wife, pressed against the wall, and Richard, her boss, leaning in far too close. His hand rested on her waist, fingers digging into the fabric of her blouse. Their lips were just inches apart, the tension between them undeniable. The world seemed to tilt, the air in the room growing thick as I stared, my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to yell, to do something, anything, but I couldn't move. My hands clenched around the flowers, crushing the delicate petals. At that moment, Claire looked up and saw me. Her eyes widened in shock, her mouth parting slightly as if to say something, but no words came out. She quickly stepped away from Richard, who turned to face me, his expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Mark." Claire gasped, her voice trembling. It's not what it looks like." I stared at her, unable to speak. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. "Not what it looks like." The phrase echoed in my head, mocking me. How many times had I heard that line in movies, in books? How many times had it been a lie? Richard took a step forward, clearing his throat. "Mark, let's be rational about this," he began, his voice measured, like he was dealing with an upset employee. "You've got the wrong idea here." I could feel the anger rising in my chest, a burning sensation that spread through my body. My hands were shaking now, but I kept my voice low, controlled. "The wrong idea?" I said, finally finding my voice. "I just saw you with my wife. What part of this am I supposed to misunderstand?" Claire took a step toward me, her face pale, her eyes filled with desperation. "Please, just let me explain," she said, her voice pleading. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice rising. I let out a bitter laugh, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "What's complicated about cheating, Claire?" Her face crumpled, and she glanced at Richard, who stayed silent, his expression unreadable. My gaze followed hers, and the sight of him standing there, so calm, so composed, made my blood boil. "I trusted you," I said, turning my attention back to Claire. "I trusted you with everything." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand, stopping her. "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "You don't get to explain this away. Not after what I just saw." For a moment, neither of them said anything. The room was filled with a tense silence, broken only by the sound of my heavy breathing. I felt like I was suffocating in that space, my chest tightening with every second that passed. Finally, I dropped the flowers to the floor. They landed with a soft thud, petals scattering across the carpet. "I'm done," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper, though the weight of the words hung heavy in the air. I turned on my heel and walked out of the office without looking back. The sound of Claire calling my name echoed down the hallway, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I stayed any longer, I wasn't sure what I would do, whether I'd break down in tears or let the fury inside me explode. All I knew was that the life I thought I had, the marriage I thought was solid, had just come crashing down around me. The days after catching Claire with Richard were a blur of sleepless nights and restless thoughts. My life had turned into something unrecognizable. The anger that burned inside me was relentless, a constant reminder of the betrayal I couldn't shake. But beneath the fury, there was something colder, something more calculating. I wanted answers. I wanted justice. And more than anything, I wanted revenge. I stopped going to work, claiming I was sick. In truth, I just couldn't face the world. I wasn't ready to explain to anyone what had happened, wasn't ready to tell my family or friends that my marriage, the marriage everyone admired, was crumbling. So, I stayed home, buried myself in a plan, and enlisted the help of the only two people I trusted. Sam was the first one I called. He was my best friend from college, the guy who knew his way around a computer better than anyone I'd ever met. When I told him about Claire and Richard, his reaction was immediate. "That's messed up, man," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "I never thought Claire would. I mean, she didn't seem like the type." I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, well, neither did I. What do you need me to do?" Sam asked, and just like that, I knew I could count on him. "No judgment, no questions, just action." "I need information," I said, pacing around my living room. "Emails, phone records, anything that shows this isn't some one-time thing. I want to know how long it's been going on, how deep it goes." Sam was quiet for a moment before he replied. "I can dig into her phone, maybe track her work email. It'll take some time, but I'll find something. I've got a program that can help pull her texts from the cloud." "Thanks, man," I said, feeling a mix of gratitude and bitterness. Gratitude for having a friend like Sam, but bitterness for needing him like this. "And, if there's anything on Richard, I want that too. I've got a feeling this isn't his first affair." "You got it," Sam said with determination. "I'll get to work." The next day, I reached out to Ethan, another close friend who worked in corporate law. He wasn't as tech-savvy as Sam, but he had connections. When I told him about Claire and Richard, his reaction was immediate. "That bastard," Ethan spat out over the phone. "I always thought he was a sleaze. What do you want me to do?" "I can pull some strings, see if anyone at the firm has heard anything about him." "That's exactly what I need," I said, pacing my kitchen. "I want to know everything. If Richard's got skeletons in his closet, I want them out in the open." "Consider it done," Ethan said without hesitation. "I'll make a few calls. Give me a couple of days." I hung up, feeling like I had taken the first real step toward taking control of the situation. If Claire and Richard thought they could get away with this, they were wrong. I was going to expose them, both of them, and make sure they paid for what they'd done. The waiting was the hardest part. Every hour that passed felt like a lifetime. I barely ate, barely slept, spending my time glued to my laptop, obsessively refreshing my inbox, waiting for any updates from Sam or Ethan. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sam called. "I've got something," he said, his voice tense with excitement. "Claire's been emailing Richard from her personal account, but it's more than that, Mark. They've been meeting up regularly for months. I've pulled the metadata from their messages. There's a pattern. Late-night emails, texts, even calendar appointments labeled as meetings." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Months. This wasn't just a fling, it had been going on for months behind my back. "Send me everything," I said, my voice tight with anger. "You got it. But listen, there's more," Sam continued, his tone dropping. "I've been digging into Richard's background like you asked, and he's got a trail of lawsuits following him. 2 former employees sued him for sexual harassment, but the cases were settled out of court. No one really talks about it, but it's there." I clenched my fists. That's it. That's what I need. Later that night, I sat with all the evidence spread out before me, emails, texts, legal documents. Every piece of paper, every line of text, was another betrayal. Claire had hidden so much from me. And Richard? He was worse than I thought. As I stared at the pile of incriminating material, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. "Hey, I've been making some calls," he said. "Turns out Richard's been on the radar for corporate fraud, too. Nothing's been proven yet, but there's smoke. And where there's smoke, there's usually fire." I sat down heavily, feeling the weight of it all. This guy, he's ruined more than just my marriage. "Yeah, it looks that way," Ethan agreed. "What's your plan now?" "I'm going to confront them," I said, my voice steady. "And I'm going to make sure this blows up in their faces. No more hiding, no more sneaking around. They're going to regret ever crossing me." A few days later, Sam and Ethan came over to help me finalize everything. We sat in my living room, poring over the evidence like we were preparing for a trial. "You sure about this?" Sam asked, looking up from his laptop. "Once you go through with this, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said firmly, though inside, my emotions were a storm I could barely contain. "They deserve this." Ethan leaned forward, a serious expression on his face. "Just be careful, Mark. This isn't just about an affair anymore. Richard's got powerful connections. You're playing with fire." "Let him burn," I replied coldly. There was a long silence. The reality of what I was about to do sank in. This wasn't just a confrontation, this was a calculated takedown, something I never imagined I'd have to do to my own wife. Finally, Sam spoke up again. "We've got everything we need. When's the showdown?" "They're flying out for a business trip tomorrow," I said, my jaw tight. "I'll catch them at the airport. That's when I'm going to confront them." I stood up, looking at the pile of evidence one last time. My marriage was over. My trust was shattered. But I wasn't going down without a fight. "Let's end this." The next day, anticipation churned in my stomach as I drove to the airport, a blend of adrenaline and dread coursing through my veins. The sky was a bleak gray, matching my mood, but I didn't let it deter me. I was ready. Armed with all the evidence I'd gathered, I felt like a soldier heading into battle. As I parked in the short-term lot, I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. I had rehearsed this moment countless times in my head, but nothing could truly prepare me for what was about to unfold. I grabbed the folder filled with emails, texts, and documents that would expose Claire and Richard's affair, the weight of it feeling heavy in my hands. Walking through the terminal, the hum of travelers and the chatter of families surrounded me, but I felt utterly isolated. I spotted the flight board and checked their departure time, just under an hour before takeoff. I glanced around, searching for any sign of them, and finally caught sight of Claire's familiar dark hair. She stood with Richard just outside a cafe, their heads close together, laughter escaping her lips. Bile rose in my throat. I steadied myself, adjusting the folder under my arm. As I approached, my heart raced, but I knew I couldn't back down now. This was the moment I had waited for, the moment I would finally confront them and expose the betrayal. "Claire!" I shouted, my voice booming over the ambient noise. Both of them turned to me, their expressions shifting from surprise to confusion. "Mark!" Claire gasped, her eyes wide with shock. "What are you doing here?" Richard stepped forward, a cocky smile plastered on his face. "This isn't your place, buddy. Why don't you step off?" I ignored him, focusing on Claire. "So this is where you've been, huh? Sneaking around with your boss while I'm at home wondering what's wrong with you." Claire's face paled, the laughter drained from her features. "Mark, please. Let me explain." I took a step closer, holding the folder up between us. "Explain what?" "The emails. The texts. The meetings labeled urgent." I shook my head, my voice rising with anger. "Do you think I'm just going to stand here and let you talk your way out of this?" Richard scoffed, crossing his arms. "Come on, Mark. You really think this is the time for a scene? You're making a fool of yourself, a fool." I shot back, my gaze fixed on him. "No, Richard. You're the fool for thinking you could get away with this." Claire's hands trembled as she reached out. "Mark, please. It's not what you think. I swear. I can explain everything." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all those months of trust shattered beneath me. "Then explain why I found you in a compromising position with him. That's all I need to know." "Let's take this somewhere private," Richard suggested, his demeanor shifting from defensive to manipulative, as if he could still control the narrative. "You don't want to make a scene here." "No," I said, my voice unwavering. "You don't get to dictate the terms anymore." Claire looked between us, panic evident in her eyes. "Mark, I promise you, there's more to this." I was trying to help Richard. "Help him?" I interrupted, my voice incredulous. "By having an affair? You call that help?" Richard stepped in, his tone condescending. "Look, this is just a misunderstanding. Claire and I were working on a project together. Things got complicated." "Complicated?" I spat. "You're a liar. You think I'm going to buy that? I have all the proof I need right here." I gestured to the folder, feeling a rush of vindication. "Mark, just stop." Claire pleaded, her voice cracking. "Please, listen to me first. It's not what you think." I opened the folder, pulling out the printed emails and text messages. "You think I need to listen to excuses? This is all I need." I held the papers up, shaking them slightly. "This is your betrayal. This is what you've done to our marriage." Her eyes filled with tears, and she stepped forward. "You don't understand. I was undercover." "Undercover?" I repeated, disbelief coursing through me. "Undercover for what? For who? You think that excuses what you've done?" "Mark, please." Claire reached for my arm, but I stepped back, anger boiling over. "Don't touch me!" I shouted, the weight of my heartbreak spilling over into rage. "You think you can just sweep this under the rug? You've shattered my trust, and now you want me to listen to your excuses." Richard interjected, his voice low and menacing. "Let's just take a breath here. Mark, if you continue this, you could regret it. Do you really want to go public with this?" "Public?" I echoed, my voice shaking with emotion. "Why should I protect either of you? You're the ones who have done wrong here." Claire's face turned desperate, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "Mark, I was trying to expose Richard. He's involved in illegal activities. That's why I was meeting him. I was trying to bring him down." For a moment, the world around me faded as I processed her words. "What do you mean? Illegal activities?" She nodded fervently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can prove it. I've been collecting evidence, too. I didn't want to tell you until I had something solid. I thought if I could get close to him, I could find enough to bring him to justice. Richard sneered, his composure faltering. That's a lie. She's trying to manipulate you, Mark. Don't fall for it. I felt my heart race, my mind reeling as I weighed her confession against everything I had seen. You expect me to believe that you've been cheating on me while trying to bring him down? I never meant to hurt you. Claire cried, desperation in her voice. I thought I could do this without putting you in danger. I swear I love you. I just didn't know how to tell you. The chaos in my mind swirled around me, but in that moment, I felt a flicker of doubt about everything I thought I knew. Was there truth to what Claire was saying? Had I been so consumed by rage that I hadn't considered her side of the story? I need to think, I said finally, the conflict inside me palpable. I took a step back, the evidence in my hands suddenly feeling like a weight I wasn't sure I wanted to carry anymore. Mark, please don't go, Claire implored, reaching out again. Just, give me space, I replied, my voice a mix of anger and confusion. I turned away from them, feeling the tears threaten to spill as I walked toward the terminal exit, the reality of my world shifting with every step. Outside, the cold air hit me, and I leaned against the concrete wall, struggling to catch my breath. My heart raced, torn between the anger at Claire's betrayal and the confusing truth she had just revealed. As the adrenaline began to fade, 1,000 thoughts flooded my mind. Was she truly undercover? Had I misjudged everything? The realization hit me hard. The love I thought I had to protect was now entangled in lies and deception, leaving me at a crossroads I never expected to face. The cool air of the airport parking lot felt like a slap in the face as I leaned against my car, my mind still reeling from the confrontation. I had walked away from Claire and Richard, but the weight of everything they'd said lingered heavily in my thoughts. Could it really be true? Was Claire trying to expose Richard's illicit dealings? As I sat in my car, I found myself replaying our encounter, her desperate eyes filled with tears. My anger had masked the confusion, but now that the adrenaline was fading, the truth was harder to ignore. What if she hadn't been unfaithful in the way I thought? What if she truly had been working to protect me, and countless others, from Richard's shady business practices? My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, breaking me from my spiraling thoughts. It was Sam, checking in. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hey, man. How did it go? His voice was upbeat, oblivious to the turmoil I felt. Not great, I said, my voice hollow. I confronted them, but things took a turn I didn't expect. What do you mean? Did you get proof? I took a deep breath. Yeah, I got proof of their affair. But Claire says she was undercover trying to gather evidence against Richard. She's saying he's involved in illegal activities. Wait, what? Sam sounded stunned. Are you serious? Yeah. I don't know what to think right now, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. It felt like she was being honest, but it's hard to separate the truth from the lies. Mark, you can't just overlook the affair. She cheated on you. No matter the reasons, that's a huge betrayal, he urged. I know. But what if there's more to it? I felt the frustration bubbling up again. She says she loves me and was trying to do the right thing. Look, I get that this is complicated, but you need to protect yourself. You can't let your emotions cloud your judgment, Sam advised. Have you thought about going to the police with what you have? If Richard really is involved in something illegal, you could help Claire take him down. I don't even know if I can trust her right now, I said, my voice cracking. I thought I knew who she was, but now, Mark, you need to decide what you want. Do you want to fight for her, or do you want to move on? You can't keep straddling the line, Sam said firmly. I don't know, I replied, feeling the weight of his words. I need some time to think. Okay, just don't shut down. I'm here for you, whatever you decide. Just take a breath and figure it out, Sam said, his voice softening. After hanging up, I sat in the parking lot, the reality of my situation crashing over me like a tidal wave. I felt adrift, pulled between anger and uncertainty. The next day, Claire called me, her voice shaky as she asked if we could meet. I know I messed up, Mark, but I need to explain everything in person, she pleaded. I hesitated but finally agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe near the airport. As I arrived, the familiar scent of coffee wafted through the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. Claire was already seated at a corner table, her eyes scanning the room anxiously. "Mark," she said, standing as I approached. Her expression was a mixture of hope and fear. "Thank you for coming," I nodded, unsure how to begin. "So, what's this about? Please, just let me explain. I know I hurt you, but you have to believe me when I say I was trying to protect you," she said, her voice trembling. I folded my arms, forcing myself to maintain my composure. "How do I know this isn't just another excuse? You were with him, Claire. You let me believe everything was fine." "I know," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "But I found out Richard was doing something illegal. He's embezzling money from the company, and he has connections to some dangerous people. I thought I could gather enough evidence to take him down. I thought it would be temporary." "Temporary?" I repeated, incredulous. "You thought sleeping with him was temporary?" "I thought I could keep it professional. I thought if I played along, I could get close enough to expose him without putting you in danger," she said, her voice rising in frustration. "But then I got caught up in it, and everything spiraled out of control. I never meant for it to happen like this." "You put everything on the line, Claire. You put our marriage on the line," I said, the anger flaring again. "How could you think that was okay?" "I was scared. Richard has power, Mark. I thought I could control it, but I didn't realize how deep it went," she confessed, her voice breaking. "And then I realized I was in too deep." I ran a hand over my face, my heart aching. "So what now? What do you expect from me?" "I need your help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you help me gather enough evidence against him, we can take him down together. We can expose his crimes, and I promise it will make everything right." "Right?" I scoffed, the bitterness rising again. "How can we go back to right after this? You've shattered my trust. You've shattered everything. I know it seems impossible, but please consider it. I can't do this alone. If we work together, we might be able to take him down and clear the air between us," she pleaded. "Claire, I need time to think," I said finally, the pain cutting through me. "I can't promise anything right now. Just don't walk away, please," she said, her voice pleading. "You mean everything to me, and I don't want to lose you. I made a mistake, but I love you, Mark. I always have." As I looked into her eyes, a mixture of desperation and sincerity, I felt my heart tug in two directions. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to return to the life we once had. But the other part, a part that had been hurt too deeply, was screaming for me to walk away and never look back. "I'll think about it," I said finally, standing up. "But right now, I need to sort this out on my own. Please, just, don't close the door on us," she whispered, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I nodded slowly, feeling the heaviness settle in my chest. "I'll see you later," I said, my heart aching as I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Claire behind. In the following days, I found myself wrestling with the reality of what had happened. I replayed our conversation countless times, the weight of my choices pressing down on me. Could I really turn my back on the woman I once loved? The woman who claimed she was fighting to protect me? But the memory of her with Richard loomed like a dark cloud over my heart, and every time I thought of it, anger bubbled up again. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been a fool for trusting her so completely. As I sat in my apartment, staring out at the city lights, I felt a flicker of hope mixed with uncertainty. I had to make a decision, one that would shape the course of my life. The path forward was uncertain, the choices ahead daunting. I could either embrace the possibility of a second chance, working with Claire to uncover the truth, or I could walk away, choosing to heal and rebuild my life alone. With each passing moment, the weight of the decision loomed larger. Whatever choice I made, one thing was clear: my life would never be the same again. The divergence between our paths had begun, and I had to choose which direction I would take.